Hello, and welcome to the library. Hi. Hi, Sigrid. Hi, everybody. I hope that you're doing well. I am. Although it's rainy here. And it means that it's kind of, somewhat melancholic. I don't know. I'm running a bit late on everything today. I think I did not do my Japanese. Nothing is going properly. This is kind of like saddening. In some ways, I have like my Japanese vocabulary that I need to do. I did not do the written expression, the essay writing. I think today's essay is on, I don't remember. I think it's like on Japanese US relations, something like that. I don't remember. And I thought that I could squeeze everything before the stream, and alas, it was not the case, especially because I don't really know what we'll do today. Like the title of the stream, the topic we are supposed to do research on is early fantasy shōjo manga, and talking a little bit also about like lesbian/sapphic relationships, about yuri. The problem is that, and I made a post on Blue Sky, it's a very interesting topic. There's like a lot to say. The problem is that most of the information, because we were talking about like very early manga, I mean like, 70s, maybe a little bit of like 60s, but mostly 70s. They have not been translated. There's no translation. Information is very parcellary, and you need like to use like search on Japanese database or things like that. The problem is that first of all, it's not very interesting to watch on stream, especially when we don't have like an audience that is able to speak like Japanese or read Japanese without me having to translate everything. And second of all, Japanese databases for manga are not the best, unfortunately. Like there's no tag system, so it's pretty hard to find like relevant information. And I feel like going in a very deep dive into Japanese manga magazines, it's maybe not that interesting. So today I think we will be doing kind of like a very general overview of the situation. We'll try to find like some interesting ideas, but I don't know. This will not be perfect. So we'll still, look at several interesting things, but I don't really know where it will lead us. So it's like we're here for like 2 hours and a half, something like that. Same thing as last week, because there's raid afterward. I know that raid is a bit delayed, but I still want some time for myself, especially because I have Japanese to do. It never ends, like the grind never ends. Jap, Anne, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. Do I want to do... I don't know. I'll do some... I'm sorry, I'll do some like Japanese vocabulary. Nugu to undress. I think you're like something like kang, and it's like a loop. I have like there are some like SNL jokes and sketch bits that I know, but like I'm not exactly an, SNL enjoyer. So alas, it's kind of like going a bit over my head, I guess. Say manufacturer. I could stream that, but at the same time, like, do I want to stream my Japanese? Maybe not. Chukujitsu, national holiday. Kata, shoulder. Semai, narrow. Todoku, to be delivered. The joy of having like those pairs of transitive and intransitive verbs, it's always very funny. No, it's not funny. Kisoku, this is a roll, and kiritsu, this is a low. You should be like celebrating, isn't it? Like arawao? I don't remember. Celebrate, no, iwao. To celebrate. And that's it. It's just this misreading of Jeopardy joke of Japan-US relations that the participants misread by reordering the words. Very dumb. But what's the joke then? Because, like, there's like, a profanity, but it doesn't go beyond that. So I don't know. I don't know what's the point of it. I don't know. I don't understand humor. This is hard. Okay, we'll transition to the other scene now that I've done my Japanese vocabulary. Okay, that's not exactly what I wanted to showcase first. Okay. So today we are talking about, as I said, early fantasy shōjo manga and a little bit of yuri on top. It's a complicated topic because fantasy is like very large, right? You can like put everything you want inside, and there has been like fantasy forever in Japan. But what is of particular interest to me is like, something closer to like historical fantasy or sword and sorcery fantasy, basically like historical and high fantasy, because if we do not like restrain our topic to those particular genres, then we are having too many things. For example, we can talk about like magical girl, shōjo, but that would be like a little bit too much. We can talk about like resurrection fantasy, but again, like the topic is kind of endless. We'll kind of, touch upon that a little bit, because there's not an article, but like, I guess it's an article from someone that is kind of like doing research on magical girl history. And he is making very interesting points that we can use as a basis for our research. Again, the goal here is not, to derive a very detailed research. It's mostly to have some ideas going forward, maybe introducing you to some like manga that you may not know, and just understanding how we are arriving in the 90s to the very interesting situation where we have like Utena, and we have like so many fantasy manga that are very well known today. Like I think Utena is very well known. We have like Sailor Moon, although it's not exactly, high fantasy, historical fantasy, obviously, it's magical girl. And more recently we have things like Akatsuki no Yona. And yeah, the question is like, how did we arrive to that point? Because it did not appear from nothing, ex nihilo. And it's interesting to see that there is a whole history of like manga that people usually do not know in the West, because those manga are not translated. A bit more, I would say, in the English-speaking world, but it's kind of a difficult situation in other languages. Like France is having an interesting publishing ecosystem right now, where they are trying to go for more vintage, let's say, shōjo manga, but it's often at the cost of like historization, contextualization, and you kind of like understand that they are here to make money first and foremost. Unfortunately, we have to rely on amateurs basically to have a more complete history of manga history more generally, especially because the academia is trailing a little bit behind. They are talking about a lot of interesting things when it comes to anime. I think like the anime research field is extremely vivacious on very specific topics. Also, it's really, really good. Manga, a little bit more unclear, and shoujo manga, a lot more unclear, especially because we tend to just see like the very famous vintage manga, and we have a very shallow knowledge of things that happened around it, because resources are really, really rare, and you need to like read and mostly speak Japanese, I guess, to be able to do some research. The point is, and we have been talking about that for the for the last few streams, about Kurimoto Kaoru-san, very famous. You won't see like her face, but very famous person, writer. And she's especially known for like Guin Saga. We have mentioned Guin Saga a lot lately, and she did, and you can see there the sword of Paros no Ken. Although it's a bit interesting because like everybody, and me included, say Paros no Ken lately, but it seems that it's not like Ken. It's tsurugi, like the old way of telling of. I don't know. Like I think I'm a bit tired. And I can't speak in English today, but the old way of saying sword, and I think you can see that. I don't remember Manga-pedia. Paros. Paros no Ken. No, this is Ken as prefecture. Where are you? I mean, you were kind of like, I saw you. And you can see that like on here, they say it's like tsurugi, so it's a bit interesting. I don't really know. I mean, it doesn't make any difference, but it's funny. So this is like Mangapedia is also a very good like database for manga. I think it's like maintained by people that are working on manga in Japan. The problem is that you can see like it's pretty bare bone. You have like the author, you have the publishing house, but you have not a lot more. I don't think we even have like we have the date of publication, but not in the basic informations. And it's kind of like hard to use this database. It's good if you want to check a manga that you already know, but you cannot really use this database to search for new manga. Like you have to use like other avenues, and there are not a lot in Japanese, things like databases that are very readily accessible. You kind of have to go through, you know, weird fan-made site of like otaku that are like, oh, I will do like all the preservation of this particular series by myself. We don't need like official bodies doing that for us. So it's really good, but you really have to, you know, search deep in the internet to find like interesting things. Anyway, so before we talk about the Sword of Paros, I want to talk about the Guin Saga, and we'll just read the introduction on Wikipedia, because I think it will give you like a good idea of the importance of the series. So a heroic fantasy novel by Kurimoto Kaoru-san, in publication since 79. The thing is like, you can see maybe it's like a bit below, or maybe not. But okay, so you can see here that she stopped at the 130th volume. I think she died like 3 days after releasing it. And there was like a small hiatus, and like other writers are kind of like taking care of, well, the new volumes. So it's still ongoing, but it's not Kurimoto-san anymore. So a record 100 volumes were originally planned, but the current total stands at 149 volumes and 27 side story novels, with the last 19 volumes and 5 side stories being published posthumously. Okay, so she died. Okay, but well, you can see here that she died like 3 days after working on this volume, and it is the longest single writer's work in the world, with a total sale of 30 million copies worldwide. So pretty big. When we say like worldwide, know that very few of Guin Saga has been translated in English. You have like the first 5 volumes. I think you can also find them, well, obviously in the UK. I think it's Penguin Books that is taking care of like the publishing. And in France, I'm not even sure it's translated. I don't remember anymore. But obviously you have only like the 5 first volume. You can see here that there was also, an anime, but it was like only 1 season, and it's kind of rushing through the story, so it's kind of like a bad way to discover Guin Saga. And same thing for the manga. Why are we talking about this particular series? Well, because you can see like the total sales are extremely important. And I have like a very foundational article also by Kotani Mari-san. And we'll go through that article. This is a very famous article, kind of like setting the basis for Japanese studies on Japanese science fiction by a woman. But there's like this section that we will read afterwards. But I just want to read the plot overview with you first. So the series centers around a mysterious warrior named Guin, an amnesiac with a leopard mask magically affixed to his head. Remembering nothing but his fighting instincts and the word aura, he confronts a world laden with danger, intrigue, and magic. So you're really in, fantasy, kind of like Conan the Barbarian world. Where you have like, so this Guin, this like leopard, but you have also, you can see here like Rinda and Remus that are like twins, and they have lost, their kingdom, and they're kind of like going on a quest with like Guin to, regain their kingdom, go on adventures and help Guin with his own quest. I don't know much about like, the later things I mean, all of this is like in the all those characters are in the early volumes, but like I obviously do not know about the later volumes because they have not been translated, and I've not been following what happened. I don't even think there was like English fan translations. So yeah, very important, and I'll talk a bit more about like Rinda and Remus a bit after, because there's a reason why the main characters are twins. But to understand that, we need to like see other things first. I just want to go through this article very quickly. We won't read like the entire thing. But what is very interesting is for Mariko Tani, and you can see like the title is like Space, Body and Alien. So it's really about the materiality and the instantiation of the body in Japanese woman science fiction. It's like, in other words, how women are using femininity and the body to express certain ideas. And she's going through a lot of very interesting things, but we won't discuss that. On Guin Saga, and this is like in the section, The Alteration of Masculinity, she says that in the preceding section, the images of women transforming into monsters are strongly linked to the alteration of masculinity. What kind of alterations can we observe in the imagination of woman science fiction? So she's going through like some background on Kurimoto-san. She's saying that her most celebrated work, Guin Saga, is a heroic fantasy nanana. So the twins try to restore the kingdom, that's what we have seen. And the protagonist Guin is a swordsman with a leopard's head who is half man, half beast. Why a leopard's head? The heroes of heroic fantasies have conventionally represented the epitome of masculinity. By creating a hero who lives on the border between man and beast, the author re-examines the transcendent and deviant nature of ordinary heroic fantasy protagonists by revealing the essential instability of sexual differences and human natures. Kurimoto, who casts these kinds of strange heroes in her heroic fantasies, is also known as the founder of the genre of female romantic fiction called shonen romance, shonen ai. And this is a genre that is like directed at a female audience that depicts male-male homosexual relationship. We will talk about like this shonen ai a bit later. She's talking about the Showa Nihongen, but it's like the Nichu yo nen gumi. We'll talk about that a bit later, so I don't want to really talk about that. So Kurimoto has turned the body of a regular heroic fantasy protagonist, the flawless macho male hero, into a body that is half man and half beast. She has also attempted this type of alteration of masculinity in her shonen ai fiction. These works explore deep romantic bonds between men that could only be imagined in a fantastic world, and they are not simply homosexual. These texts question how one may attain equality in relationships, and to what extent this kind of intense conceptualization is deviating gender is possible. Here, the usual masculinity and sexuality are completely altered and reconstructed according to women's romantic desires. Works that portray deviations from the real world, such as the alteration of masculinity, often appear to borrow the style of science fiction and fantasy. This is very important. So this is like the basis of the investigation. Works that portray deviation from the real world, such as the alteration of masculinity, often appears to borrow the style of science fiction and fantasy. And you need to remember that it's also about women's romantic desires. There's something in Japan, well, not in Japan, a Japanese term called like fujoshi. So it's BL, it's boy love. But what is interesting is the word fujoshi, so rotten woman, which is the name for like the woman that are fan of BL. And this is very interesting. We are talking about like women that are enjoying reading about like homosexual relationships between men. And you can ask like, why would you do that? What is so interesting in this? I don't know if this article is like nice enough to provide like the recent explanation or not. Most BL fans are either teenage girls or young women, okay. It has been suggested that Western fans are may be more diverse in their sexual orientation than Japanese fans, and that the Western fans are more likely to link boys' love to supporting gay rights. The majority of BL fanfiction writers are also believed to be heterosexual women. The reasoning behind this trend is sometimes attributed to patriarchy, that women who write boy love fanfiction are in fact acting out of heterosexual sexual fantasies through these male figures. What are they talking about? What are they talking about? This wiki page is like really outdated. This is really not the current state of research. Let's not talk about like Patrick Galbraith, because I think it's like the only reference that we have in the West. Okay, so we'll talk about, I'll talk a little bit about that. Fictional men are different, exactly. Fictional men are different. The thing is, there was a lot of things that, it's such a big topic, and we need like to start from the beginning. So, when you write manga in Japan at this time, so in the 60s and 70s and onwards, you write in magazines. So you need to pitch your idea in a magazine, and then you'll be able to work on a particular series for certain amount of time. And what is very interesting is that stories about teenager girls, sometimes like young women, that was mostly tragedies or slice of life. You had like school life, slice of life, things like that. And it was not very well received to portray girls in more, in lesbian relationships, let's say. There are things that the editors back then, and you can see that in Moto Hagyo Po Clan, so Po no Ichizoku, where in the interview she's saying, well, I kind of like wanted to talk about vampires and like characters that are doing, kind of like insane things, like kind of like killing people and things like that. But my editor was like, well, maybe this is too much, like if it's a woman. But if it's a man, if it's a teenage boy, then I guess it's acceptable. And so you had a lot of writers that were like, well, I guess we can use like male characters as a way to talk about certain subjects without like, incurring the anger of our publishers. And also, because you're a woman, you kind of want to go into a more like a sort of fantasy. You don't want to talk about women because it feels like too close to home. It feels like a bit uncomfortable. Like if you write about women, you're kind of like, you are reminding yourself that you're writing a fantasy and that you will not be able to do that in real life. And so for these reasons and a lot more, a lot of like early mangaka and writers, book writers, were choosing to explore shonen ai, so boy love relationships, because it gave them the distance necessary to talk about certain themes and, you know, to touch upon like LGBT subjects, about more taboo topics like death or incest and things like that. And this is a big part of Japanese woman culture in Japan back then. You find the same thing in literature as well. It's kind of like outside of our scope, but to give you some perspective, there's a writer called Takahashi Takako-san that wrote. She wrote a lot like after the war, and especially like in the late, well, mostly like the 60s. And she's not a feminist per se. She never called herself a feminist, but she was writing books that were kind of like harming the perceived idea of heterosexuality and patriarchy. But her stories are a bit crazy, to be honest. Like, you can see like there's a story called Sora no Hatemade, to the end of the sky. And this is a story where the character, so a woman, is like a bit jealous of her other, you know, woman friend. And she's basically like stealing her child, raising her friend's child as her own, but like mistreating the child. And everything is done because like she feels very disjointed to like the patriarchy and, you know, the expectations of like good motherhood, and she's like acting a bit like madly and also very violently. And this is like something that you will find a lot in a fiction. There's this short stories like Lonely Woman, where it's a series of like stories where it's like, oh, I've heard like in the newspaper that like somebody has burned a school, like an elementary school, and the narrator is like, I'm sure it's a woman. It's like, oh, this woman, she felt like so tired from her life, and she had like that raptus that like she kind of like run amok, and she decided to like burn a school. This is crazy, but this is so based. And then like for the rest of the short story, the woman is thinking about like, oh, I should like burn a school as well, because that's like a sign of, you know, revolt in this society. And you have a lot of things like that. So woman fiction was deep into like violence, BDSM, crime, incest, you know, all the things that were deemed taboo in general, because for women it felt like it was an avenue of freedom for them. Yeah, this is crazy, but this is very interesting. This is like extremely interesting. And so she wrote like in the 60s, end of 60s and 70s, and she kind of like prepared the, let's say, woman liberation movement that we had in Japan in the 70s. And you had a lot of people, of writers as well, that had like this a similar approach of being very violent in their fiction, because it was fiction and it was like very liberating for them. Me, when my fave fictional man locks me in a cage. Yes, although in this fiction it's mostly like the reverse in literature at the very least. Like there's also a story in like Lonely Woman where it's like the man is kind of like a plant, and the narrator, the woman, is like, I don't know, taking care of the plant, and she's having a sort of like mystical sexual relationship with a plant, and she's thinking about like, I don't really know. I don't really understand what happened there, but like the leaves were kind of like his body, and maybe also his genitalia, and she's kind of like doing weird things, and it's kind of like a reversed like Pygmalion story. You know Pygmalion, right? I mean, yes, Pygmalion, the man who wanted the best woman possible, and like he kind of like made a statue, and the statue became alive, and this is Galatea. And well, this is a bit crazy. So it's like the man creating a woman, and in Lonely Woman it's the reverse. It's like a woman creating a man, and like kind of like, oh, you're my toy, basically. You're my toy, you're my thing, I own you. And it's not even about like your sexual pleasure, because it's it's talking about sexual pleasure, and this is like, no, we're not talking about that. This is me. I decide I'm the woman, because in this fiction, in this fantasy of mine, I have the power. And so that's why you have like all those very, more mature things, more mature themes. But for like manga magazines, that was a bit too much. Obviously, like you couldn't put like incest and cannibalism and BDSM and all in manga. So the mangaka, woman mangaka, would like use BL relationships instead. And so that's like the advent of Shonen Ai. But we're not talking about Shonen Ai, although it's very interesting. So I'll leave that aside for now. Cowards. I mean, +2. There's also, I'll kind of like bounce on what May said about like my fab fictional men like locking me in a cage. There are, very, I don't know, some kind of like very dark fantasies that we can see in like manga as well. We kind of like read an article about that. This is like this is a very interesting article by Ito Kinko-san, and we'll probably read this article. There are several sections that are very interesting, and you can see that it's about sexuality, like woman's sexuality. So there will be like things about like BDSM, but also like, well, you can read by yourself. And this is like a very important thing in Japanese manga, shōjo manga, and there are like fantasies about that, because it's about fictional characters, and you can kind of play with that. So we'll read that maybe later, I don't know. So to go back on the topic of fantasy, even cannibalism is gatekept by the patriarchy. Shake my head. +2. To go back on the topic of fantasy, you can kind of understand that fantasy offer a very interesting playground to explore certain themes. And one of the themes that is particularly well known, and also in it was like kind of like a fad back then, is like a woman that has to take the appearance of a man. And you know the Rose of Versailles, right? Berusa Yonobara. It's very famous. There's like the new anime, but the new anime is like whatever. So it's by Ikeda Ryoko-san, extremely famous mangaka, one of the best. And Berusa Yonobara is about like basically French Revolution. But we have like this girl called like Oscar François de Jarjailles, and she is passing as a man within the Royal Guard of France. And it's about like this story of like how you have this woman that deals with, you know, with like being in, you know, near the power, in like with a high status, but she cannot be a woman. She has to disguise herself as a man. And this is a very foundational theme in fantasy shōjo manga. Why? Well, remember I told that there was a reason why in Guin Saga you had like twins. And the reason is that, and we kind of, let me check like if I have a list, because I think it will be like very very interesting to check. So maybe I can like do this. So we're on my anime list. And this is like a broad history of like shōjo manga, whatever. And you can see here, this is like the foundational thing. This is the foundational thing because it's by, you can see like Osamu Tezuka. Do I need like to present Osamu Tezuka or not? Because it's kind of like quote unquote the father of like manga, of modern manga. It did so many interesting things and very famous things. We'll just see, you know, a few of them. But like, I mean, yes, Doro, Pluto, Blackjack, Astro Boy, you know, so many very famous things. He did like everything, basically. He also, you know, plagiarized a lot. I have a lot of bad things to say about like Tezuka as well, because he is not perfect, but very famous, obviously. And so this particular manga, Ribun no Kishi, called also Princess Knight or Princess Sapphire, whatever, depending on where you live, is the foundational shōjo manga. So shōjo mean young girl, by the way, in Japanese. And when we say shōjo manga, we are talking about like manga that were published in like shōjo magazine. A shōjo magazine, meaning like a magazine for young girls. Most of the writers nowadays of shōjo manga are women. It was not exactly the case in the, let's say, 50s, early 60s. It was like men writing about, well, writing for young girls. And it led, you know, to very interesting situations. Because again, most of the literature back then for young girls were slice of life, about school. Not really romance. It came a bit later. It came really, you know, in the mid like 60s. It was not like a theme that was well explored before. Or tragedies. But like most men from that period were like we need to write about like slice of life for like young girl, but like we don't know what to do. It's like we are, you know, we have never grown up as girls, so it feels like uncomfortable to write this way. And we have like several interviews of like famous mangaka that felt that way. And for them, like going into a fantasy world was good because it removed this necessity of talking about slice of life. They could just, you know, do a traditional Western style adventure, fantasy adventure, and put like a woman as a central character. And so Ribon no Kishi, you can see, we can read this. This is the story of Princess Sapphire, who must pretend to be a male prince so she can inherit the throne, as women are not eligible to do so. This deception begins as soon as she is born, as her father, the king, announces his baby to be a boy instead of a girl. And the reason for this is that the next in line to the throne, Duke Duralumin, is an evil man who would repress the people if he were to become king, and because of this the king will go to any length to prevent him from taking her over. So it's like, okay, we are kind of like abiding by the rules of patriarchy, but we're also subverting it by saying that no, okay, a prince will inherit the throne, but like the prince is a woman, basically. And you had like, I don't know if you can... Exactly, you have like a sequel for this called like Futago no Kishi, so the twin, knights or whatever. And in this sequel, you have like a twin brother and sister, the children of the fire. And this idea of like, this was very famous. Again, you need to understand that like Ribbon no Kishi was extremely famous. This is kind of like the foundational manga, shōjo manga, for a lot of people. And it spurred women to really start, creating their own manga basically a decade later. And so in this sequel, you have like twins, one boy, one girl, and this is a theme, this is a setup that will be used like everywhere. You will always find, some kind of reference to like Futago no Kishi. And the first person to have done so, and there was like another very interesting. I'm not doing a lot of research right now. I'm mostly explaining things, but I hope it's still interesting. One person that really took that to heart, and maybe I won't find that here. This is the one. So, Hoshi no Tategoto. It's a massive manga. You can see the title, Harp of the Stars, whatever. Nobody has read that in the West because it has never been translated as far as I know. But this is big. This is like by Mizuno Hideko-san. And she is like the OG mangaka, basically, the OG woman mangaka. You can see here they are saying like one of the first women to be a commercial success as shōjo manga author, and she was particularly influential in the 60s and 70s. Members of the Year 24 group cite her as an influence. So we'll just talk about the Year 24 group, Nijuon Nen Gumi, a bit later. But like basically, for now, remember that it was like one of the most famous mangaka, early mangaka. My base knowledge is low, so please explain all you want. I mean, I'm just yapping here. It will be like pure yapping. And so she did like other things, but like her big thing, and kind of like, it's not like her first story, because obviously like My Anime List is kind of like a amateur database, so people need to add things by themselves. But it's like Hoshi no Tategoto, and whatever, like Linda is the daughter of Count Charlotte in the land called Digreus. The land of Zaromon has been seeking a chance to attack Digreus. However, the king of Digreus is always having a party. When Linda is in a party, a group of Zaromon come into the room. A harpist rescues Linda. The harpists say the group just pretended to be Zaromon, and they were actually working for Count Zolge, who is a traitor. Linda wonders why she knows the harpist's name is Julius. Julius also knows the name of Linda, even though they have never met before, or have they? This is very short. This is 2 volumes, but it was big. It was big because it was made by a woman. It was fantasy, so it felt like very fresh, and a lot of people have been inspired by that. And then you have what we saw here, the Nijuon Nen Gumi, which is basically a group of people that were born in, well, it's a reference to the people that were born in 49. And you can see like a lot of very famous mangaka, woman mangaka, and basically, like, as like this Wikipedia page, and it's pretty correct, say, it was never a name that was, official. But it kind of referred to like a very specific, time in shōjo manga history that was a revolution. All those like mangaka did revolutionize the manga scene, the shōjo manga scene back then. Like Moto Hagio is like such a big name. Ikeda Ryoko, same thing. Like immense, and all those people are like immense people. And so we talked about like Ikeda Ryoko with like Beru Sayonbara. She also did like Onisama E, which is kind of the story of like a girl going into like an all girls school, and she's like writing letters to like her brother about like all the sapphic stories that she has in her school. Very good. If you like Yuri, this is very good. And yeah, immense people, very tall. So this particular manga, Oshi no Tategoto, really was like the thing that pushed fantasy as a very, a genre that can be explored by women. And you can see like, you can see here, this is a list of like, of manga from back then. And we won't go through all of them, but my point is just to showcase you the fact that there are a lot of like very famous manga, fantasy manga back then. Is this a yapping stream? Yes, we're talking about like early fantasy shōjo manga, a little bit of yuri. We're doing like a kind of like history of manga yapping. And like this particular, like those manga, like Rurihiro Princess, Kanata Kara from Far Away, very good, very famous, very, very good. Fushigi Yugi is like maybe the big one. If you don't know Fushigi Yugi, this is really cool. This is kind of like an isekai as well. It's just like a high school girl that is sent in, kind of like a fantasy world, and she's becoming a princess, and she has to do so many different things like to save the realm and whatever. So it was basically isekai before isekai became cool and became like shonen. We were there before, women were there before. And you have so many things like Juniko Kuki, this is the same thing. It's like a girl, again, this is like a female-led isekai. So you had like, yeah, basically like schoolgirls being sent in like other universes, and this was really, really big. It really became big in the 90s. And that's kind of like the question. It's like, why is it that prevalent in the 90s? And we have like other things before that are not exactly, that may not be Red River. This is really good. Like if you speak, well, I wanted to say if you speak in English, speak English, but I think like if you're on this stream, then you need to know English. So what are you doing here if you don't understand what I'm saying? But Red River has been published in English, and this is really, really, really good. And this is also a trend that you will see in all those like isekai from back then, is that it's an isekai, but it's kind of like, and sorry for this very cursed comparison, but it's very, I don't know, Assassin's Creed pilled, in the sense that you're not sent into a very, high fantasy universe, but it's kind of like a historical period sprinkled with fantasy on top. Mythology mostly. So it's kind of like a historical isekai, to be fair. So really big, and all those things were really, really, really big. You have like Inuyasha, obviously. So you can see that in the 90s, you had like a lot of very famous things that people know about. But before that, before the 90s, you had things, but they are kind of like confidential. And this is kind of like the question is like, what do we have like before? Because there's like a time gap that needs to be solved between, Hoshi no Tategoto, which was released in like the early 60s and the 90s. We have like 30 years, and there must have been things. It's just that we don't know about them. And we need to explore that to understand like what happened exactly. This was not the comparison I was expecting. Me neither. This is just the first thing that came to mind. I'm sorry. I was not cooking with that comparison. And so my my point is that well, you need to understand, I believe, and I need to drink as well, hydrate, else I'll die. Sorry, that this group of mangaka kind of was revolutionary because they introduced new themes to shōjo manga. One thing was, and especially by Takemiya, but also like Moto Hagio-moto-san, for the Yuri state for Assassin's Creed, is that, yes, the big things were like shonen ai, as we said, like BL romances, and also a focus on psychology. Focus on psychology that was not seen before. It really is about, you know, the struggle of like living in one's body in a society that is like not willing to acknowledge your erotic, romantic feelings, and it was more serious. It felt a bit more mature, even if like the characters were still teenagers. Also, I don't know what kind of like pseudo, I don't know, invocation you're doing, Rani. This is unclear. But and you had also like other themes, like also science fiction. Science fiction was like big with like Hagio-moto. She did a really interesting thing, and especially like very good, and we'll have that very not that near in the future, but she did like Red Star kind of peak. It's like kind of like super engineered like children, and we are following like a Star Red, and she's like peak. She's basically a superhero. Very interesting. Very nice. So okay, those people were really, really interesting. They pushed like manga further. You had like a lot of very mature themes, but do we see that in fantasy? Do we see that in like early shōjo fantasy written by women? And so that's kind of like the point of today, is to understand the gap between the first stories that we had and Utena. You know Utena, obviously. Everybody knows Utena in the internet. It's like the kind of like easy yuri to get into. It's like, how do we go from Ribbon no Kishi, from Princess Sapphire, to Utena? What happened? Understand the gap moe. +2. And we had like an example, obviously, Guin Saga, and also, as you can see, Paros no Ken, although Paros no Ken kind of like was in the late, mid like 80s, so we were quite close to, not the Utena, but like the 90s isekai boom. Well, and just a word on Paros no Ken, it's kind of the same thing. Like you have like Fiona, that is the very feminine woman, and you have like Aminia, that is the princess in disguise, basically. So she's playing the role of the woman hiding behind the persona of a man. It's like 3 volumes. It's really good. If you want like something good to read, Paros no Ken, just beware, it doesn't end well. but really good, really instrumental also. And this is fantasy, but like in a sort of like pseudo, I don't know, ancient Greek thingy. It's a bit unclear, but really good. And that was in IT6. So again, there's like a lot to cover, and we need to understand what happened here. So as researchers know that you have like a basic hypothesis, you have like some ideas of what you want to explore. It's time now to fill the gap. It's time to search for information that would fit between this time frame of, I don't know, 1960 to like, I don't know, 1980 or 85. What do we have in between? Do we have things that are interesting in fantasy in between? And the answer is yes, but how do we find that? Hypothesis, yuri is based. I mean, it is an hypothesis, and I will say it's an axiom even. So as we said, like we have different possibilities. We can search in databases. That's what I wanted to do with like Mangapedia, but as you saw, Mangapedia is not referencing manga by their date of publication. So it's not that good to use. So we can try to use some Western database. And a first idea would be to say, oh, I'm using, I know it's not complete, but I'll try to use the MyAnimeList database. The problem is that, and you will see that immediately, is that this site is bullshit because I don't know. Let's say shōjo, and we want fantasy, for example. So I'll search for this, and now I'm in the awkward situation where I cannot, you can see I cannot sort things by, oh no, I can, because like this, you need to edit the columns. I was washed up. Maybe I was just washed up. My bad. So maybe it's not a bad start. Okay, so we have obviously like a lot of things that have like no date. And it's kind of like annoying. Okay, so you can see that we find like Ribbon no Kishi. We find like other things that have been written by like Osamu Tezuka. Shotaro Ishinomori, also very famous man mangaka, but unfortunately it's a man, so we don't care. Futago no Kishi, so it's the same thing. And you can see like on MyAnimeList, the first like fantasy shoujo by a woman mangaka is like Hoshino Tategoto. It's maybe a bit small for you. And then we can like search for other things. And then it's like the very... also MyAnimeList has an API you can query by bulk probably. Do you have access to like the API without being a supporter? Because I know that on MyAnimeList you can like subscribe, which is like kind of like insane to me, but... I mean, I've seen like interesting things in the next page, like manga that are kind of popular. Okay, this is also a very big manga. We need to talk about that because this is really important. Aries is really big. Aries is a very, very big manga by Fuyuki Rurika-san. And again, you can see like it's kind of like Greek mythology. It's a sort of historical fantasy, because historical fantasy was really big back then. Let's see what you have. Maybe we can then. Maybe we can. Maybe I need to try that on my own time. For now, like it will do. but you can see that like same thing, like Hades is like 87. It's a bit too late. This is a very famous manga. Please Save My Heart. Very famous, very popular, extreme influence in Japanese fiction in general. They put that in fantasy. It's more like sci-fi, I would say. And you can see it's about reincarnation. So this is kind of like the reincarnation fantasy type story that is kind of like out of, you know, the topic, but it's really good. I could try to create a web scrapping Python script. I mean, yes, but like, I don't know. Maybe like it's a bit overkill for what we are trying to do. So very famous, very big, and I kind of want to like showcase another thing because it's a bit like important so that you can have like a better idea of what we are working with. So there's this like Japanese, I think they are Japanese person called like Ehoba. They are specialized in magical girl history. Everything on the internet can be obtained. AI, well, scrapper for AI type discourse +2. And so they did like a very deep history, like they are going very deep into everything. They are talking about like manga that, you know, no one knows about like in the West. And they did like a first post on like the 60s and 70s magical girl fiction, although it was not exactly called magical girl yet. It was like not Maho shōjo, but it was like Majoko back then. Well, Majo being like, you know, I don't know how to explain that. Like it's like the witch child instead of like the magical girl, basically. And he's kind of like referencing like so many different things from that period. So this article is like really long. You can see that they are cooking a lot. They are really doing something great here. Witchling, yes, can be like this. So they did like that, and this is really interesting, but like magical girl is a bit outside of our scope. But they made like a section called no, it's like is it not? Okay, reincarnation fantasy, exactly. And so they are kind of exploring the idea of like reincarnation. That's not something they want to, you know, delve too deep into because that's not exactly their subject. But they acknowledged that it was really important and it had some influence in fantasy fiction and fantastic fiction in general. And so they are talking about Please Save My Heart, and you can see that this is like a section in itself because it was really big and it's really good. If you want like to read something like a old school shōjo that is really good, Please Save My Heart. Put that in your like, you know, pile of books of manga to read. This is great. And this was like published in Hanato Yume, which is one of the most important shōjo magazine that we have in Japan. It's about like a lot of different things. I don't want to spoil that. It's like really good. And there's this idea of like reincarnation, like a girl will be reincarnated in something else, somebody else. And this is a big part of what you can find. And this kind of seeped into also like magical girl aesthetics. That's the point of this article, because you have like a magical girl that will die at some point. And well, Discord reading list when? We'll have an announcement. I have an announcement to make. Sonic the... No. but we'll have like an anime that I want us to watch together. You know, maybe I'll give you 1 month to watch the anime, and we'll work on that anime together, doing some research. Not Sonic. It will be. Do not put Sonic. This was a joke. This was a joke. No, Vi will come back and keep quiet. Keep quiet. But there's an anime, negative, positive angler. We talked about it last time. And I want us to watch this anime, like maybe, you know, over 1 month, and then we can discuss it and we can do some research together on that anime. Together, you know, but we talk about that a bit later. I don't know. Vi is not ready for this kind of stream. What do you mean? A Sonic stream or like the stream we're doing right now? Because I think like she's maybe here. I know she was here at the beginning. Whatever. You're not obliged to stay here. If you have things to do, you can leave. It's fine. It's second monitor content. I'm just yapping. I feel like I'm talking too fast also because I'm so excited. But yeah, all of that to say, this is very good, but this is a bit late, and this is not exactly the topic. One very good thing is like Alhaif no Kishi, and you can see that it's kind of like the same structure. It's called Alhaif no Kishi, which is a reference to Ribbon no Kishi by Tezuka, obviously. And it's kind of the same thing. You have like twins that have like to save their kingdom, whatever. And you have like the girl and the boy twin. And well, this is really a reference to like Ribbon no Kishi and Tamago no Kishi, the sequel with the what am I talking about? I don't know. I was reading historical cross-dressing and I wanted to say +2 because this is again really a central theme of like of manga from that period. So yeah. Is Vi even alive? Did she connect her brainstem to 14 and get isekai'd? I don't know. I don't know. But again, Alhaif no Kishi, very interesting. Not that famous, but you know, still. I like the twins, obviously, like the blonde people there on the cover. But you can see that again, 87. It's too late. It's too late. We're suffering here. And there are things, and we kind of like need to like explore that. So for example, what is this? Yume no Hate, the end of the dream. So, some, you know, people with like magical power, radioactive power, but it's kind of like sci-fi, I guess. So it's not really the point of what we're doing. Well, we have like Samaland, but so okay, yo, that's interesting. So she got isekai. We saw that on the list of like the female-led isekai like manga, but again, it's like 1994. Do we have like things beforehand? I don't know. And you can see that like, well, I don't know, we're kind of like exhausting our leads very early. Like Creamy Mami is like, this is more magical girl. This is not exactly our topic. This is, I think, the very interesting well, we have like several interesting things here. Okay, I'll open what I think is interesting. This is your own historical, okay. You seem to be interesting. Pandora no Himitsu. Okay, and then we okay. So let's explore quickly what we have here. Creamy mommy, dreamy mommy. Stop. You don't know like this series? I think it was called like Gigi in France, and it was like so good, but it's traumatizing because at the end, like, I don't know how to explain that, but like Gigi gets like, is hit by a truck and she dies, and then you're like, what? And you were like, you watched that, and I remember I was watching that, I was like 7 years old, and like Gigi just dies, hit by a truck, and you're like, what? And then like 1 episode later, it's like, oh no, I'm an alien, so I'm, I can revive and everything is fine. I was like, what the heck is happening? They're crazy. They're crazy, but I was traumatized. That was kind of traumatizing when I was like, she not even got isekai'd. She was like she died, and for like 1 episode and a half, I think it was like, oh, we are doing her funerals. It's like, as a child, you see like her parents being so sad and making like going to the funeral and things like that. And then she just came back like as if everything was all right. And she's like, oh no, don't worry. I'm not a human. I'm what? Maybe that's why I'm weird, because I was watching this type of, anime when I was a child. Anyway, this seems very interesting. Country of Flower Dragon. I think I've seen that like at some point, but I can't remember where. But it seems to be pure fantasy. We are in a fantasy land because it's the, well, you can see the country of Flower Dragon, Hana Kamuri no Ryu no Kuni. So need to keep that in mind, and it's like 81, pretty good. You would always have been weird, dear librarian. Don't sell yourself short. What does that mean? What does that mean? I mean, I was also, one anime that I watched like when I was a child was like, do you know about that? Not that, dear God. Can we have like the anime, please? Do you know this anime? Was that something that was shown in your countries? It was not that big, but like pretty big in France because like the original novel was French, and it's about like this boy. Would you include early Otome to be semi-aligned on the topic? I wanted to wait a little bit to go into Angelique, but yes, I think like when we get into video games, there's this very specific thing where we are making games for girls. And if you know the story of Angelique, you know that it was made by Ribe Party, which is like kind of like a sub-branch of like Koei Tecmo, which is a studio only with women. And they were like, okay, so we are an all-woman studio and we'll make games for women. And you have like Angelique, as May is telling us. I mean, okay. I mean, maybe I shouldn't search that because I have very interesting results here. So the first Angelique was released on the Super Nintendo, and it's an otome game. It's a game where you play like as the princess, and you have like so many different, prince, and you need to become the queen, and you can make like romance with like different characters. So it's like the reverse of like those games where you have like those romance games like Tokimeki Memorial. Where you play like a boy that is trying to, fall in love with like, classmates, female classmates. it's the reverse perspective. You're playing as a woman and you have like a harem of male character, and this is like the otome genre. And this is an important thing. And this is indeed, like as May is telling, a bit related to what we're saying. Because this happened during the I don't want to say like reverse harem, because it means that harem is necessarily about like a man with like woman inside. I think it's the same problem that in Japanese you have like oh, she doesn't know the world anymore. No, I'm mad. Okay. You have the word like iputasai. Games for maidens, yes. You have the word iputasai, which means like literally, so this is like husband here, and this is like wife. So like one husband, multiple wives. But in Japanese, it doesn't mean like polygyny. This is not polygyny, is like the literal translation, but this is not the first term. It's like polygamy. I mean, polygamy is the same thing, but it's like you can extend that to like, you know, just poly relationships. And it's like, no, you think that we are only talking about like one man having like several wives. Why not the reverse? And you have like the reverse, I guess, like isai tabu? I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Do we have the reverse? Where is it? I mean, I will just type it to ma. Aisatafu, no rendaku here. And you have like polyandry, but this is like a very specific term that is kind of like in use because people have understood that it's kind of like very, I don't know, sexist to just think that, you know, poly relationships are only, you know, one way. But like it's also it's still very, you know, straight coded. What are we talking about? Okay. And so you have like this reverse harem, quote unquote, with Angelique. And it's great. It's great because it's part of like this boom of like shōjo manga. So we are past the golden age, I think, of shōjo. We are kind of like nearing the moe period. But that's when like Angelique became like really important, and that's a big part of like let's say girls' culture in Japan. And one important thing also to note, I don't know how to showcase this. Do I have this? Let me try to do something. I need to go on a cursed website. Maybe I will find what I want, or maybe not. So true. I don't know how would you read that. Hitori taneko? I don't know. Okay, perfect. I have what I want. Can I like... Help, I can't open this in here. Can I open this in here? Please, I beg of you. Okay. Those are magazines, shōjo magazines. I was saying before that like manga and all, you know, lots of things were released in magazines before, you know, sometimes hitting a very tankobon, so it's like a volume of manga, the one you would like buy in your bookstore. What I want to showcase here is like two different magazines. There are 8 years between the two. The first one, this one, so it's Ribon. Like this is the same magazine, right? You can see it's the same title. This is Ribon, and we are in 66 here, 66. And this one is like 74. And you can see that there is a big difference between the two. And the difference is not just like the visual style, it's also the content. You do not have the same mangaka inside. Like the generation has completely changed. And you can see that we have kind of like, let's say, abandoned the Japanese aesthetic of like the young girl, she's like a bit cute. It's like kind of like vernacular Japanese culture from the post-war. And we are something that is more, I don't know, lively, happy, romantic, cartoon. It feels like also more in touch with, you know, young people. Like, this is not exactly, even back then, the prime example of like, I don't know, being romantic or being very fashion. This is more the thing. There's like something that is brighter, it's more vibrant. And this happened in 8 years. Like the shift from the let's say mid 60s to like early 70s was huge. It's a big difference. And you will find a lot of different themes as well. Well, maybe you think that it's very cute what is inside of this particular magazine. It's really not. Like the manga inside are pretty mature, let's say. I was talking about like the year 24 group and how they introduced like new themes, psychology in their manga. That's basically the difference that you will find in content. In this first one, it's about, I don't know, slice of life, girl comedy, very, you know, very light, not very, I don't want to say interesting, but not very profound, maybe. In this one, we are talking about like sex affairs between like teacher and students. We are talking about incest. We are talking about again, darker fantasies about things, you know, between adults. And this is like the transformation that happened, you know, in a few years at a time. If the 60s were so good, why those were called mid? Everything is mid. I think everything is mid. But yeah, kind of scandalous. And that's what people were saying back then. It's like, oh, they're doing scandalous things. And I mean, we are talking about shōjo today, but like this was also the same thing for the more, you know, male-oriented work. Because at that point, some people, some studios, especially in anime, were trying to go in the sense of like the otaku. And they wanted to like have a reaction from them. And that's why, like, I don't know, I don't think I can show that on screen. But in the article that, well, I closed the tab, but in the article by Eroba, there are some examples where he shows anime where young girls, so basically loli, were shown naked on screen. It's not sexualized, but they're still shown naked. Like there's like some magical girl anime where the young girl is literally taking her bath and she's naked in the first episode, and then she, you know, kind of like stand up from the bath and you can see her like naked and she's like probably, I don't know, 12 years old, and you're like, what the heck? And even people back then seems to have been, you know, very, I don't know, put off by this. But this is kind of like what they were aiming. They were trying to draw a reaction from the audience. And so you have like those stories that are always bordering these, the line of this is scandalous. And it can be for several reasons. It can be for bad reasons, like just draw a reaction, or it can be for subversive reasons, being like, oh no, this is in fact, this is like a way to reverse patriarchy, to not abide by the rules that have been, decided by old Japanese men for centuries, since the Heian era. And so what is scandalous? Scandalous, it's about a deviation from the norm. And there's always, this discussion about, do we need to deviate from the norm? Well, is the deviation from the norm ethical or not? And that's a discussion where everyone has their own, own limits, obviously. But this was a conversation back then. It's like, can we show that on, in our manga, in our anime? And you had a lot of things where, to go back to previous conversations, where the editors, the publishers were like, maybe that's too much. And, going into fantasy universes, using like several different settings that are more conducive to have to I guess, welcome those ideas. This was a sound strategy for a lot of people. And that's why like the history of like manga is like so hard to understand, because you have like multiple influences from everywhere, and there's like a lot to research. Okay, so that's basically it on that topic. I don't know what we were talking about, to be honest. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about this anime for, a few moments. So this is an anime about this boy who is kind of like, he's in a, I don't know, poor family, but I think like his mother or his father, I don't remember exactly, sold him to like a traveling performer called Vitali. This is not you, I don't know where Vitali is, whatever. And it's kind of crazy because at the beginning, like, everybody is like very happy with like the animals, the monkey and whatever. But then Vitali dies, and you have like several animals that are dying as well. And that's the first part of like the anime. And then he kind of like, well, this is not the same version, but like he finds, so this is Vitali, by the way. He finds like rich people, and the rich people are like, oh, you're poor, but you're really funny and you're really cute. So what about joining us in our travel, because we are traveling by boat, something like that. And then like the boy is saying, yeah, okay, I can do that, because like, everybody died around me. And then at the end of the story, obviously you learn that like the boy was part of the very rich family, and everything is going well because the goal in life is to be rich, and who cares if the people that were in your life are dead. Kind of like traumatizing also for a young child, this anime. So there are interesting things here. You can see we have like a high school student journeying to Hokkaido in search of a magical cure, and she's basically, I guess, like entering a fantasy world, the land of the fairies, whatever. So there's like, again, influences from Western fantasy, obviously, King Arthur and the Knight of the Round Table, Celtic, Greek, and Ainu, obviously, because it's Hokkaido, and to be fair, it seems quite peak, no? Plus $2. And also, the cover goes so hard. Interesting. And this was released in 1977. So we have something, but I guess like Taka is a man, right? Or is it a bit it's I don't know. We should keep that in mind. Why not? Pygmalion again. Pygmalion. So we are probably in a ancient Greek setting, but this is a boy. So do we care about boys? Shinji Wada. I don't think. This is Shinji Wada from Sukeban Deka, of course. And you did Pygmalion. Oh my god, we're learning. Sukeban Deka, very big thing. Sukeban, delinquent girl. And basically, like, she's investigating in the murder of her best friend. Well, her best friend died in a very weird manner. She's like, kind of like investigating that with the help of like the police, and then she's going on in her own detective adventures. This is very big. This is really good, and it's basically one of the most important reference, one of the most important early detective stories. Manga, you see references of that everywhere. This is really good, and I don't know, Sukeban Deka is kind of like, it's very iconic in Japan. They did like a lot of films and TV dramas and whatever. And it's like kind of insane. Like she's fighting with your yo-yo, but like she's solving crime and like, you know, fighting people with things. It's a bit crazy. It's good. I love Sukeban Deka. Very nice and very big thing in Japan. So you did like Pygmalion, but it's like with a boy, so we shouldn't care too much. Chibi Neko is a young kitten who has been abandoned. She doesn't know why she has been abandoned. She thinks she's a human girl and believes she will become human someday. Is it Sigrid? She's found and rescued by a boy named Tokyo, who just has graduated from high school. However, he flunked the entrance exams for uni and now is unsure of his future. Tokyo begins to love him and wants to become a human and marry him someday. But then she sees Tokyo with another girl in the park and she sees that he's in love with this girl. She keeps being visited by Raphael, a mysterious male cat who tries to tell her that cats cannot become human. They are always cats. What will Chibi Neko do? What the heck is happening here? It seems peak again. Oh, you did banana bread don't put. Oh, okay, interesting. Interesting. Okay. The yo-yo pose with the fire is so good. It is. She's crazy. It's really good. Sukeban Deka is really, really good. Oh, it's kind of badass, right? And it was like the big thing, like the delinquent stories. Like you had the Furio for the boy delinquents, obviously, and Sukeban is the girl variation. Really good. I love it. It's so yuri coded. Also, it's kind of crazy. You can see that it radiates like lesbian energy. I love it. Okay, interesting. Chibi Neko, I need to read that at some point. I love like the title also. Wata no Kuni Hoshi, the star of Cotton Land, or the star over Cotton Candy. Yes. So we have like Fushigi no Kuni no Sen Ichiya. Sorry, 1001 Nights in Wonderland. Well, Fushigi no Kuni is a very interesting title for various reasons that I will explain. And again, lots of parody from famous fairy tales about a girl who is raised as a boy. Classic. You can see that like it's really used everywhere. So parody, obviously, because Fushigi no Kuni. And this is, you know, you can find that in the translation, because it is very reminiscent to Alice in Wonderland, right? Because that's it. That's literally it. Fushigi no Kuni no Alice is a Japanese translation of Alice in Wonderland. It's a really big thing. Alice is a really, really big thing in Japan. And Fushigi no Kuni is Wonderland. We can do an entire analysis of like what Fushigi is, but it's kind of like marvelous, fantastic, fantasy, whimsical at the same time. You can use it in a lot of different contexts. And Fushigi no Kuni no Sen Ichiya seems to be like a parody of Alice and a lot of different things. Again, with a girl raised as a boy. Very interesting. And you can see that we are in the 80s, meaning that this trope was big enough to be parodied. So it means that in the 80s, in 80, probably fantasy shōjo was big enough for it to be parodied that way. This is very interesting, and we should keep that in mind. So we have that, and okay. So this is basically what we have with this particular database. The problem, again, is that my anime list is a very incomplete database. You need to log things yourself, and you need to wait for the admin to accept your things, but it's very, very slow. I think some people that I know have been like adding things, and they had to wait like 2 years before like the manga is accepted, because my anime list loves taking your money, but nobody is taking care of the database, so it's really crap. Another avenue we can use of database is, well, another thing we can do is like check old shōjo magazines, and you just like read all of them. It's really hard if you're not in Japan, if you don't have access to Japanese magazines, but it's also a good way to see what was released and not go through the bias of filtering through databases. You tried submitting some volume counts and it still hasn't been updated. I mean, they seem to have like a staff of like one person, so it's, yeah. AniList is a bit more reactive. It's a bit more reactive, but it lacks some functionality. I really like AniList, but it's not perfect. It will be better, I think, in a year or two, but it needs to be taken care of. I really like the tags because it's kind of like community tags. You can see that you have tags and you have like a percentage, which is like the number of people basically that are using, well, that for putting this tag on a particular work, and this is very collaborative. You have a lot of different tags, so it's really nice when you're searching for particular mangas. The problem is that the database is still incomplete right now, although they are really fast, so it's getting added pretty quickly. So unfortunately, manga anime list is not that good to find, well, to help us in our research, because they don't have a lot of very old manga. By the way, I'm surprised that like, well, am I surprised that Sousou no Furiran is like the first anime of all time? Not really. I would say, I wouldn't agree, but I think deserved, because I think like Sousou no Furiran is very good. Thankfully, there's an add-on to auto-sync anything to both. It's true, exactly. Well, there are, whatever. We're not here to check that. The other database that you can use in English is Manga Updates, which was known as Baka Updates before, and I think this one is pretty good. It's probably the best database for manga, especially because it's tracking also like the translation and localization in different languages, so pretty good. And so here, for example, we can search by tag. We can like put shōjo and fantasy, and we can like check what it yields. And so, well, order by year, and we need to go to the end. So there are 141 pages. The problem is that most of the things here obviously don't have a date, so we need to like progress a little bit, and we have like some things. So you can see that we still have the same things as we had on like Manime list. We see okay, so this is like the remake of like Ribon no Kishi. Okay, so the original Ribon no Kishi is here, and we have like some more Tezuka, whatever. And we find like our Oshi no Tategoto, which was like the, again, seminal work that we were working with. And then, okay, we have like something that we did not see, you know, on my anime list. So we can like check what it is. Himitsu no Ako-chan. Ako and her mother have been living together since their father became the captain of a luxurious cruiser. Why is this like particular trope everywhere, by the way, in manga? Do people know here Captain Tsubasa? Do you remember that the father of Tsubasa is also the captain, you know, of a cruiser, and he's never here, and you just see him sometimes like watching the sea and the horizon, while you had like the mother and like Roberto Carlos in the living room being together, and it's like a bit weird. Okay, but like one day Atsuko accidentally broke her favorite mirror. She made a grave for it. Interesting. On the same night, the sky brightens and Ako receives a gift, a compact mirror from the mirror spirit of her kind-heartedness. Whenever she sings the magic words, the magic compact mirror will allow her to transform into anything she hopes to be. So it's kind of like magical girl coded, right? Maybe not exactly what we're searching. We're just writing out the men. That's unreal, so true, +2. I just have 2 moms. Okay, so not exactly of particular interest. Sarutobi E-chan. E-chan appears to be a normal little girl. I can zoom also a little bit so you can see. But appearances can be deceptive. She is descended from the great ninja Sasuke Sarutobi and possesses ninja skills on her own. I mean, it's like fantastic, but it's not like fantasy. It's not high fantasy, right? It feels like, I don't know. I don't think it's exactly what we want, but interesting nonetheless. You're streaming, right, by the way, May? I think you're streaming in 10 minutes. Or are you not? I forgot. You got it. Kind of like a reversed isekai, I guess, this one. Hoshino fantasy, it should be something that we want to read at the same time. Like, there seems to be interesting things. There's a lot also one-shots, and unfortunately it's hard even to know about series, and one-shots is impossible to, you know, find them in the West. So it's hard to know if this particular collection is of interest to us, but it seems pretty, I don't know, more fantastical than, you know, fantasy. So I don't know, not convinced. We need to check a bit more, I guess. What is this? Nonbiri jo no choko makahime. Princess Chocolate stream in the laid back castle, and she's just making chaos, but it's slice of life. Okay. Majoko Mako, this is like closer to this is a Tezuka manga again. It is a Tezuka manga. So this is a magical girl. We're not interested by it, but this seems interesting. Short stories. Wait, it's like the collection from Otoagyo, no? Yes. Well, I mean, they're interesting things, but she was not like entirely fantasy coded. It's complicated with Motuagyo. Yeah, that's her early collection. And so now we have like the interesting thing like Pygmalion no Kohibito. I know Konshu no Ie is like kind of like a horror manga. At least like the mangaka did like a lot of like horror things. And so she did something like Konshu no Ie, so the house of the insect, something like that. And it seems to be also okay. There's also, we can see a fairy here on the cover. There's like a very big, I would say in the mid 70s. So we're kind of early compared to that, but in the early, well, 2 years early, but I would say in the 70, 75, 76, there was like a fad in Japan. It was like the British fairies. And everyone in Japan was so fond of like those little fairies, and they're everywhere. And it's kind of like the prototype for the elves that we have in Japanese fiction, with their very, very long ears. That's where it came from those fairy taken from, British lore, I guess. And we seem to be in that direction, which means that there's probably some kind of like fantasy thing going on in here, but we would need to read that. Unfortunately, we do not have like any information on this particular manga, and we do. What? I don't know. I think it's hard to find like some information. So whatever. British law. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm British pilled, but I've done some research on Britain. I've done research, for example, on like bird watching in the UK. But that's me in another life. Okay. So maybe interesting, we don't know. And we have like another story with Pygmalion no Koibito, so the lover of Pygmalion, which is obviously Galatea. And it's interesting because we don't talk a lot about Galatea in the Pygmalion myth. So it's kind of like the reverse perspective, and it's more about like Galatea. There's something very interesting here. I think this is like pure fantasy. Obviously, this is historical fantasy, and we are in 72. Pretty good. Where is the Scandinavian research? I never did Scandinavian research, I'm afraid. One day, perhaps, but it is unfortunately not in my areas of interest right now. Unfortunately. I mean, if it's related again to Japan, I will. And that's like the way to rope me into like doing some research on very specific things. But I don't know. I never fell into the Scandinavian Nordic folklore, and yeah, I'm sorry. I don't hate you. I appreciate you. I like you. We got trolls and stuff. I'm not very big on trolls. I'm sorry. I know it's like Very important, especially in fantasy, but the music stopped also. Jazz music stopped. It was not jazz, but whatever. Can I have some music? Music, maestro, please. Mooming, we'll talk about mooming at some point, maybe in like 2 months or so. And thank you for coming, May. Also, I hope it was interesting, and I'll wish you a very good stream. I think it's like your Nuzlocke, so good luck with that. But yeah, so interesting. We are in like historical fantasy, and we are in 72, so there's something interesting with this particular manga. Emeraldo no Kaizoku, the Emerald Pirate. Interesting. Toshie Kihara. Oh, what did you do? I did not recognize you immediately. Am I washed up? Oh, you did the Issei Monogatari, really? I don't know you very well. I need to check what you did a bit more in depth, I guess. Tasogare no Cinderella. Well, okay. So she did things, and she was part of like the, again, the big generation of like mangaka. So interesting because I guess the main protagonist is like the man. So a more traditional, manga romance, I guess. Among his companions are the beautiful Philip and the princess of that homeland, Rowena. Well, the question is, with who are you dating? Are you dating like the men, or are you dating Philip or Rowena? Because it changes a lot of things. Interesting. 74, why not? Akuma no Hanayome. Is it some kind of like, again, like Hades, Persephone manga? I don't know how to say. More traditional romance, also straight romance, I guess. I don't know, but we have like interesting things. I can see interesting things. Shiruvesto no Hanashi no Hoshi kara. Okay, you seem interesting. I like the cover. Shikitsuzuri. You don't have any, okay. Yukiko Kai. Anastasia no suteki na otonari. Interesting. But again, like you can see a running theme of like fantasy historical shōjo. And I think because we can like continue to search like for manga again and again, but that's not exactly like that interesting. What is particularly interesting is that it seems that we have like very typical flavors. Oh, you can see like this is part of the... do you have wings? It feels like those are wings, fairy wings, which would be like part of the fairy boom in Japan. But very specific flavors of shōjo. We have like the historical fantasy shōjo. We have the comic one, the more comedy-pilled fantasy shōjo, and we have something that is closer to science fiction. But we do not seem to have a lot of, let's say, hard fantasy. This is not something that seems to be really, you know, in vogue. And Guin Saga is maybe more an exception than the rule. Because even like Paros no Ken, the Sword of Paros, we saw that it was closer to like, well, it was a historical fantasy. And so now we have like to adjust our line of reasoning, and we need to make another hypothesis. And the hypothesis, and I don't have like, it's not a hypothesis, but it's a line of thinking, because I don't have the hypothesis. It's like, why are we like so big on historical fiction? Was there something that was conducive to that? For example, did we translate some fiction from, you know, folk tales in Japanese, and it kind of like led to a very specific interest into classical culture in Japan? Because for the group 24, well, the year 24 group, you have a lot of stories that are taking place in boarding schools, especially European boarding schools, and mostly Germanic ones. And there's an explanation for that. It's because at the time, several Germanic authors were in textbooks. We were translating a lot of German novelists in Japanese, and those were the things that you could find, like, as you know, a teenager, a young adult in bookstores, and it kind of led to a very deep appreciation of German culture, and that's why a lot of books in the 70s, 80s, manga, and so on, were set in Germanic boarding schools, and some also were set in French boarding schools. And it was also like a sort of like, you know, Occidentalism, or whatever you want to call that. The reverse of like Orientalism. It's like, oh, France and Germany, this is like, those places are so far away, and there's the sense of like escapism. We are really into a fantasy world. And this was a big thing. Also because in Japan you have what we call like Esukenka. Kenkei, sorry. Class S, which is basically stories in schools between girls. We are basically in a all-girls school, and girls are doing things together, and it's like, okay, is it friendship? Is it more? It's like a bit unclear, and you can see like it focuses on senpai-kohai relationships. So one is older than the other, or in the class above the other, and it was a really strong thing in literature. It never like, I guess, took off in manga because, again, of the publishers. But this was really big. And also because like all those schools were created before the war. After the war, you had like the end of like the gendered schools. And people were mixing with each other a bit more. Not everybody, you know, even like nowadays you have like old girl schools in Japan. But after the war, this was like much more prevalent, mixed schools, and that was kind of the end of like well, kind of not the end, but like the decline of Kankei, and they say exactly here that there was like a revival very, recently, because people are like, oh, yuri is nice. And this is also the date, like the 80s. That's when we are really starting to use yuri as a term for like woman love fiction. And this is kind of like the modern iteration of like class S literature. But that's kind of funny because like you had this genre that was really prevalent in Japan before the war, and after the war it was, you know, it kind of disappeared. And first of all, there was like a sort of like subversion of like heterosexual relationships, and as we've seen like in the 80s and 70s, there's like shonen ai, so like it's homosexual relationships but between men. And there's a really, you know, deep history of like queer fiction in Japan in popular culture, and this is very interesting. So we have like an explanation for this, you know, specific setting. Why do we have like so many stories from that period set in Germanic boarding schools? There's like sort of like a sociological answer to that, a historical answer to that. Why do we have like so many shōjo stories set in historical fantasy? I don't know. I don't exactly know. How is it linked to the idea of woman passing as a man? Why do we have like so many stories where we need to have those disguises? And when did that trend disappear? I think it's disappearing in the, I would say like 90s, when we really start to have like isekai stories. So there's kind of like, I would say, from what we've seen, maybe there's like two temporalities. There's like the historical fantasy fiction, and after that we have like, they are not like completely separated, there's an overlap, but then it was kind of replaced by like isekai fantasy. And yeah, I don't really know what to do with that. Because again, how can you explain like one genre disappearing and the other, you know, coming? And I mean, historical fantasy has not completely disappeared nowadays. You find that in, I don't know, Bright Stories. It's not exactly fantasy anymore, it's just historical. Maybe it's just that you can make the hypothesis of, and again, this is really a shot in the dark because we need to do some more research. I'm just saying that from the elements that I have in my mind. That's the principle of like a hypothesis. Maybe there was like this thing of historical fantasy, and then like the two genres kind of split from one another. Like you really had like fantasy, and it can be high fantasy, it can be like more urban fantasy, science fiction, whatever. And on the other hand, you have like historical fiction that is really specific, because I don't think we had a lot of historical fiction at that time. I mean, you had, to be fair, you had, but when you think about historical fiction in the 70s, I would say it's like closer to our time. It's like, okay, you have something in the early 20th century, maybe. You have the very occasional fiction about Cleopatra, for example, but I think it's more the outlier. We talked about the Red River, obviously. Manga, please. But you can see that it was released like pretty late, like 95. And so, okay, this is like still, you know, fantasy, historical fantasy, but because again, like a genre is not disappearing entirely, it's declining. It's not like the mainstream genre, but it's still there, and you have like resurgences and sometimes revivals. So yeah, I don't know. We have like a lot of interesting like things here we need to explore to better understand how it worked. And know that we have like the name of like the manga that are interesting, what you should do normally is like trying to get like those volumes so you can read them, but also try to get the magazines so you can see the things that were, you know, published at the same time. So was our historical fantasy manga fitting in this particular ecosystem, or was it an outlier? And maybe in the magazine you can find like interviews or things like that. And that would be the second step of like research. We have our, you know, very basic hypothesis. So now we would check like magazines, like other primary sources to just find information and to try to refine our hypothesis, maybe try to refute it completely. And we do that until we have like something solid, something that is baked by that data and that fits, you know, comprehensive history. But that means like spending a lot of time in magazines, and that's not the point of this particular stream, to be honest. But yeah, I want to talk a little bit about Yuri before we leave. So I want to read this particular article that was written by Ito Kinko, called like Framing the Central Japanese Sexuality in Ladies Comics. We won't read any, you know, everything because I think it's like pretty long, but it might be interesting to get some ideas, and maybe we can talk about Yuri a little bit, because we have been talking a lot about boys' love, but not a lot about Yuri. And Yuri was certainly a thing. It just like get popular a bit later than boys' love for reasons that we explained before. Before we read, I need to hydrate, else I will die. I can feel that I've been yapping too much. Thank God there are not a lot of callouts to do on M6S, because I can't do this right now. Okay, so in the 21st century, Japanese lady comics being like the broad name for josei. You know that you have like shōjo for young girls, and you have like josei for older women. It's not exactly clear-cut because like the shōjo magazine themselves were kind of like split between the imoto shōjo manga, so for the little sister, the younger girls, you had specific magazines, and they would like slowly like push you to read the Nesan magazine, the Ane magazine, which is like shōjo but for older girls. And then you can slowly transition, or not, you do whatever you want, to ladies comics. But ladies comics it's like josei manga, but also like some part of like shōjo that are still appealing to, you know, young women, adults. So this genre of manga or comics for young and mature adult females offers, I hate so much when you say like females, offers a wide range of categories ranging from romantic fantasy to stories grounded in perverted lust. As popular texts, the comics provide ample opportunity for hermeneutic analysis. The world of ladies' comics supplies provocative images alternative to stereotypical representations of a Japanese woman as geisha or fantastical girls like Sailor Moon. It reflects the complexity of readers' life's experience in sexuality. So we'll do an overview of that, and then like we will analyze the content of general theoretical tropes of sexuality, modernity, and their individualistic focus on carnal, pleasure and the self. This article also takes up the cathartic function of ladies' comics as a vehicle for solitary entertainment. This is interesting. And for sexual expression. Oh, my. Sexual expression of women's reader. Ladies' comics are a genre that provides a frame through which the sensual desire of one audience of Japanese readers can be freely explored. Again, this is like the idea here. I don't have my tablet plugged in, so I won't write. But this is about fantasy, right? It's really about this idea of deviating from the norm and doing that like in a space that is conducive to it, conducive to fantasy, to fiction. I argue that rather than interpreting ladies' comics as pornography, we can understand them as erotica that many women find pleasurable and empowering. Extremely true. Redeem hydrate. I did drink. You want me to drink again? But thank you, Ellie. I hope that you're doing well today. You can see like it emerged a bit later as a distinctively different genre of manga from girls' comics or shōjo manga. When readers of shōjo manga became young adults, however, they wanted to keep reading comics that were appropriate for their age and social status, and the time was ripe for the development of manga aimed to them. Perfect. There are some things about like women's independence. They are talking about like, I guess, like gaining more rights in the workplace. This is kind of what we call like the OL, office ladies. Mainly women in their 20s and 30s who are already married or close to getting married, but the readership also includes women as young as 15 and those in their 40s. So again, like those categories where, you know, demographics are very broad categories. You can be like older and still read shōjo manga made technically for like younger girls. The reverse is perhaps less true, but again, those were not clear-cut categories, and you had a lot of men reading like shōjo manga because it would feature on, you know, certain themes that you cannot find in like shonen manga or seinen manga. This was like very specific to like shōjo magazines and josei magazines, and that's why like when you read interviews about mangaka that are very well known, or like, you know, artists that are very well known, male artists, you will find that a lot of them read like shōjo manga because it was the fresh thing back then. And you have, I don't know, for example, like Hideki Anno from Evangelion saying that, oh, Moto Hagio was such a big influence on me back then, especially her science fiction. And you had like Miura from Berserk saying that Guin Saga was one of his most like influence. So like again, something that was, you know, written by a woman and maybe aimed more towards like women. So even if it's shōjo, that's like the broad general category, but you can read that even if you're like not part of this demographic. Imagine not being rich. I don't know. I don't have to imagine that. Ellie is bullying me. I mean, you do your things in the chat, I'm just yapping. So again, like a lot of themes, that's very interesting. Okay, so they talk about romance also. Romance was not exactly a theme at first, like it really came in the, I don't know, mid-60s, I would say, romance. maybe not mid, like just like 60s. But it was not something that was there like from the start. But obviously you had like very interesting themes like sexless marriage, divorce, adultery, abortion, and dieting. So very interesting themes. Themes about work here, sexism, domestic violence. You have a lot of very interesting things in the that was like the 80s, because you have also like, I can show you Shinkarari. Oh. No, Shinki. I'm lost. Give me like 2 seconds. No, it's that. It's Shinki Rari. Eh. Yes, okay, that's that, but I need like I need the manga. Okay, and you have like, so it was translated in French recently by Kana, and it's the story basically of married woman, and she's like, my husband doesn't know me, he doesn't care, he doesn't understand, and it sucks, and I have like to, you know, take care of the children's, but like nobody cares, and like I'm doing things, and you know, people are just like thankless. And so this was like published, and I don't exactly remember when it was published, 80 something, but I can't remember. '81. And it was like the first big manga about like you know, a married woman. And this doesn't end with like a, you know, ground shattering morale. It's like, yeah, it will never change, because it's the situation for like everyone, and nobody will ever care. So like, am I happy? I don't know. And it's very interesting. It's very interesting because it's really talking about like household economics, about not feminism per se, but it was really adjacent to, you know, feminist ideas that were very big at that time. And that's kind of like the sort of like manga that you will find in that period, like, as they say, like this new range of like themes with things that you wouldn't encounter or you wouldn't expect to encounter in previous manga, and even today, to be honest. Like, do you know, have you read like some manga that were talking about just, you know, slice of life, the slice of life of a married woman, and nothing is really happening in her life because she just have to take care of the children? This is really good. This is really, really good. I don't know if it has been, I think it has been translated in English, and you should read Shinkirari if it has. So, okay, the lady's comic stories catering to young adults suggest that a woman's ultimate dream is to find her Prince Charming, marry him, and have an easy, rich life. So the classic Cinderella story. Okay, but that is not like what we want. We want like exactly the thing that are not falling in that part. So they're talking about like shunga, obviously, which is kind of like the carnal representation of relationships. Exactly. They are not naked because it's about the expectation of the sexual act. It's not about the act itself, it's about the moment before. Roland Barthes was talking about that, like a very famous French literary critic that was saying that pornography is the thing in itself, but erotica, it's like the fluttering of the curtain in front of the window. And sometimes you can see, you know, between, I don't know, you can see like what is in the other side of the window, and that's what erotica is. It's like the expectative mood of carnal pleasure. Well, okay, interesting, but what we want, to be honest, is like we won't read that because I don't think like Twitch will be really happy with me if I read all of that. And let's read about lesbian sex. So lesbian sex takes place quite often in erotic ladies' comics, yes. In these scenes, two women engage in French kissing, oral sex, and sex with dildos and vibrators. The comic book readers may also consist of lesbian women to whom this is more personal. So again, this is very interesting, right? This particular section, because we say that BL was written to have like some distance between the characters, or between the characters and the reader and yourself. And here, obviously, it's like the reverse. We are writing like lesbian sex because we want you to be able to self-insert, in that particular story. And I think this is like quite interesting because you can compare that to like men reading stories about girls. And I mean, especially, you know, fantasy stories with the girl being like the protagonist. And you will see that a lot. I mean, we have seen, I think we have seen like them in the previous thing. I need to reopen. Give me 2 seconds. This particular list. But all the stories, like from here onward, Kanata Kara, Fushigi Yugi, and especially Magic Knight Ray Arth, that is really the big thing. This is like extremely big. Maybe one of the best known stories from that time. And then Escaflowne and, you know, Inuyasha and so on. And you had a lot of stories, of fantasy stories with woman as a lead. And that was like read by men. And you can ask, why is that the case? And I think you find like an answer here. It's like when you're a man, and I'm sorry to say it that way because it's literally the situation. When you're a man in, I don't know, the 90s. Remember the 90s, it's the moment when the economic bubble is crashing. So you have like unemployment, you don't have like the security of like your job. Normally when you enter a Japanese company, the goal is to stay in the same company until you cannot work anymore. It really becomes your family. And it was the expected state from the post-war, you know, the end of the American occupation to basically the 90s and the crash of the bubble and of Japanese economy. So you're entering like an era where, as a young person, maybe your education wasn't that good because like the budget for education, I can't write. The budget for education really decreased. You don't have the certainty that you will be able to work because there's no place to work anymore. And you're kind of like leading, I'm sorry to say so, but a pathetic life. A life where you feel like you don't fit in society anymore. Like you cannot reach the objectives that were like the life objectives for Japan for a very long time. Those objectives were like being employed in a very good company, working there very hard. Then you marry, and then you have a child or two, maybe. You have a house and a car, and you're done. This is your life. Maybe not a car. This is maybe not necessary, but at the very least, a house. And that's like the end goal of Japanese society for several decades. And so in the 90s, you cannot reach that state anymore. It's closed. The market is closed. And as a young person, you have no hopes of reaching the state, the ideal state that was invented, maybe 30, 20 years ago. And so, do you want to read the story of like basically a loser that is going through the same problem as you in the manga? No. It's like, it feels too close to reality, right? You don't want to read that. And that's why at that point, you had like a lot of men that were reading fantasy stories about with women protagonists, because they felt it was like a bit further from their own problems, so they really had a sense of escapism. And also because like the fantasy stories from that period, that was not as like power creep as we have nowadays with like, oh, I'm getting isekai and I have like insane technology and I'm just I'm so smart and you're so stupid. Like the Sword Art Online craze did not happen yet. So like the fantasy was a bit more subdued, and it was easier for men in that period to read like stories with men, well, not with men protagonists, but with women protagonists. And I think like this is interesting. That's kind of like what this paragraph is hinting, because like as a woman, the other way around, you are living in a world where it's hard to, enjoy patriarchy. Not even enjoy. Enjoy wasn't the word I was searching for. But like, it's hard to live under patriarchy because you don't have even the security of being like, oh, I'm, a home wife and my life is basically done. It doesn't exist anymore because you need to work. At that point, you need to work. Your husband is working, but you need to work as well because the income is not enough with only one breadwinner. And you're struggling because the market is closed, so women will mostly be on part-time jobs, like jobs that are not really fun. Probably you have 1, 2, or 3 jobs at the same time. Maybe you're even like gaining more than your husband by accumulating those jobs, but this is insane because like society is still telling you that your husband is like the most important person in the household and he is like the warrior and you're just like, the side person in this relationship. Okay, you are working, but like, is it really, do you have like really some merits in working? You do not even have a real job. You have like free, like fake jobs. Who cares about the money? This is about honor here. And that's why at the same time, you had like this, sort of like lesbian, I can't write in here. You had that lesbian boom in Japan as well. And you see that a lot in literature. And I think you see that a lot also in manga. This is like the yuri boom. This is the same thing. That's when yuri is really starting to be used as a term to talk about like woman's love fiction. And so when I say that it's in literature, you have like tremendous women authors that are writing like lesbian or sapphic adjacent like fiction, and this was a big thing in the 90s, and it kind of exists because I believe that yes, you are interested in lesbian relationships now. It's like, oh, maybe if I'm really not happy with my husband, and there's like no reason I would be, you know, in the near future, because like nobody is happy in this relationship. Maybe I can think about like being with woman. And the first step is enjoying woman with woman lesbian fiction. And that's why you have like this very big craze in the 90s. You're a level 1 orc in Durotar +2. You're nothing. Your actions mean nothing. You have been born in the wrong era, sorry. So, okay, this is a very short paragraph, but Yukili's comic story Dankin Gekijo Benigumi, woman-only theater group Beni, appeared in Takeshobo I no Taiken Special Deluxe. This is a very late, to be fair. First step is enjoying woman. I mean, depending on who you are, it carries like a very different connotation, I think. The protagonist, Naomi, is a 22-year-old ex-office worker who is a single mother. Performed as a striptease dancer at a theater that caters to lesbian women only. This is peak. Is this peak? This is peak. She is the leader of a theater troupe. Years pass, and when her daughter turns 18, she wants to become a dancer like her mother. Naomi trains her, and the daughter debuts as a new dancer. In this comic, the performers engage in lesbian striptease acts, including B and S and M. Well, it's like her BDSM. And it's really like in the West, we have like this idea of like top and bottom. In Japan, it's like either you're an S or you're an M. And you know, if you're like a woman S, you're like a queen. The audience, who obviously are repeat costumers, bring flowers to their favorite dancers and enjoy friendly relationships. The story depicts women as sexual subjects engaging in acts of sex, and at the same time, these women performers are also objectified and treated as commodities by women who are the audience of the lesbian show. Traditional male-female voyeurism is considered sexually exciting, but this comic story frames the situation as female-female voyeurism. The female audience gazes at and is aroused by female bodies. No matter what the reader's own sexual orientation, they may find viewing female-female acts as arousing as the heterosexual acts described above. So this is very interesting, because they are saying here that you have this idea of female gaze. I think this is like really, really, really important. Female gaze is very interesting. You can be like a female, not a female, you can be like a woman, and you can like sexualize things. You can sexualize like other women, and this is like okay. Because it's not rooted in the same structural domination as patriarchy, because it's kind of like embedded in the SM relationship, which is, you know, more codified. It's like, yes, the queen will treat you like a piece of garbage, mostly during the play, but she will take care of you afterwards. This is like an equivalent exchange. And that's why you have like a little bit more, obviously, equality in like female-female voyeurism situation, even if, as we are, you know, in a striptease club, there is like a power dynamic, but the power dynamic is kind of like a lesson compared to like an heterosexual thing. So I'm quite interested by that. I think this is very interesting. So I will, obviously for science, I will try to, you know, read it. The feminine gaze is alchemy, I see. It's just better. It's not better, it's just another type of like gaze. Because you're gazing someone that is going through the same thing as you. You gaze at a woman knowing that she has known, and you have also known the gaze of a man, and you know how like disgusting it is. So your gaze is a gaze that is some more respectful, probably, but also a gaze of genuine desire. It's like the same, because it's kind of like a sort of like phenomenological like thing of like, to gaze at something, something has to be gazed at, right? So you have like a situation where the person that is performing, the woman that is performing in here, in those stories, they are more often than not willing to be gazed at. Like, in this situation, I don't exactly know this manga, so it's hard to say, but like, she is the leader of the theater troupe, so she's probably happy to be here, right? And it means that she acknowledges that she will be gazed at by women and only by women, and she finds like some solace, some desire, or some comfort in it. I don't think like that being gazed is necessarily bad. It's again the nature of the gaze, and in a pure lesbian relationship, and again, this is lesbian woman only. There's like no way a man will come here in this particular club. And that gives you like the security necessary to be like, oh, I can enjoy being gazed at without feeling really inferior. Yes, I am commodified, but I'm commodified willingly. And this is the difference. It's not even like a question of consent. It is a question of consent, but it goes beyond that, I think. It's a question about the sort of relationships in general that you want to have in your life. And it's kind of like what... Okay, we're going like a bit outside of the topic of manga, but it's kind of what Monique Wittig is writing. So she has... did she... political lesbianism. So this idea of political lesbianism is, well, there are different variants, of course, but one interesting thing, and that's what Wittig is striving for, it's, yes, lesbian separatism, but it's also the fact that you want to minimize the amount of relations that you have with men in your daily life. So you're kind of like, for example, constructing your circle of friends to only have women, or mostly have women. Because patriarchy doesn't express itself only in a couple, right? You have like patriarchal dynamics at work with friends, just because they behave in a certain way. And political lesbianism, it means that like it's not just about relationships and the people you're entering the relationship with, but it's also about the way you're orchestrating your life in terms of like gender dynamics. And it means that you're refusing, for example, to spend time with cis men. I don't know. And that's kind of like, we can think whatever we want about this particular thing, but it's kind of what we have here. We have a woman that is like, yeah, I'm building my life around women. I don't want to spend time with men. So in my workplace, I will have like dynamics with women only. Things will happen. It's not perfect. Yes, it's commodification. Yes, it's objectification. But that's something I'm fine with. And the interesting fact here is that her daughter also becomes a dancer. And the mother is like, okay, it's good. Because I don't know what happens in the manga, but because maybe, well, at least you're spending time with women. and I have like good relationship with them. I don't have like a lot of problem. I think my life is really balanced that way. And if you want to become a dancer, then you can become a dancer with me, because this is a nice place to work at. Yes, there's like a power dynamic, but it's one that we as women accept because it offers, again, in the 90s, it feels like it opens a space of freedom. And this is very important. This ability to regain agency and to be able to do whatever you want in your life. And so I think it's really interesting to have like, yes, it's about like lesbian sex, but it's about like relationship between women in general, I believe. And that is like the very interesting part to me. And I don't think I have like much more to say about that. I think it was pretty good. We should probably end the stream here, unless like someone has a crazy, idea or question. I think, it was not exactly very in-depth in terms of research, but I think we did like a pretty good introduction to early shōjo manga. And we have seen a little bit how we can work, how we can do research on a certain topic, trying to have like some scientific ideas in a field that is not particularly STEM. We are not doing STEM here, we are doing like cultural anthropology, cultural studies, and the method is a little bit different than what you would do in, physics or whatever other, STEM discipline you're working in. But there's still a method that is scientific. It's still about like, finding data, building a hypothesis, and then trying to find avenues to confirm your hypothesis with like first primary sources. Like we have some ideas about the chronology of like fantasy shōjo now, but we need to confirm or refute that by checking like magazines and sources in Japanese, and that's probably something that I will do on my downtime one day when I will have some downtime. But yeah. So before we leave, I want to talk about the next sort of session like this that we'll do together. So we have been talking about negative positive angler for quite a while. I believe it's this series about fishing in Tokyo. It's literally the Sumida River. That's something I will have to watch and analyze, because it's literally the topic of my research. People that are kind of marginalized, that don't feel their place in this world. And I want us to check that. So we'll read the plot together, and I'll give you like a time frame for like a sort of like, well, I will clarify things in the Discord server. So feel free to join the Discord server if you're not here and you want to be part of this sort of like research club, whatever that we're doing. But yeah, let's do like a small like introduction to it. So the series follows Tsunehiro Sasaki, a university student who was recently diagnosed with a terminal illness and is given 2 years to live. After accidentally falling into the sea, he forms a friendship with his rescuer, Hana Hayakawa, whom together with her friend Taaki Tsujimori develops an interest in fishing, and then they are probably fishing in the city. It is a 20-episode series. What I would like to do, if possible, is that in 1 month, so I don't know, it can be, I don't know, May 16th or the week after, the week of like the 19th, something like that. So we have like 3 weeks and a half or 4 weeks. I would like us to take a look at this particular anime. So you have like 1 month to watch Negative Positive Angler, and then I'll probably, because I'll try to watch it like early, and I'll give you maybe in 2 weeks like some episodes we'll focus on. If you want to wait like for, either you can watch the entire series right now and we'll discuss about that, or you wait 2 weeks for me to watch the entire series and I'll post like some episodes I really want to focus on. Maybe because we can't like talk about like 12 episodes in depth. So maybe we'll take, 2 episodes and we'll try to really work on them. I need to find like a way to work on that because like we can't show the episode like on stream. So maybe it would just be screenshots, whatever. But yeah, you can wait 2 weeks and maybe I will, do a short list of the episodes we will focus on. And in 1 month from right now, we are like reconvening and we're talking about fishing and this particular anime. And the goal is not just, to analyze. The goal is, who cares if it's good or bad? Like, it's not like what is interesting in our conversation. What I want us to do is like, does it give you like some ideas about fishing? Do you have like interesting ideas that you have in mind while watching the anime? Does it make you think about like other things? Can you relate that to some other experiences that you had, some other, fictional work that you went through? I don't know, other games, as we talked about, other books, films, whatever. So yeah, we want to go like deeper than just, is it good, is it bad? I want us to talk about like fishing. It's about what fishing means to those characters, to fiction in general, and to and for us. And this is like a sort of like collaborative like research. I have some particular themes that I want to explore, but everything that you have in mind, everything that you find interesting will be okay, and we can talk about that. We can do an unofficial stream on the Discord server. Sorry, we can do that. I give no guarantee you can organize that without me if I'm not able to be present. Because, I'm quite busy, and when I'm like watching those things, I'm doing like so many things at the same time. I'm multitasking, I need to take notes. So watching something with me is not fun. It's like I'm making a lot of pauses or breaks during watching to take notes and things like that. So we can do this, but no guarantee. Even that I know you want to be, to have like some sort of like an official activity with me. I would like to, but no guarantee, because this is really about my my research topic, and I want to be like really on point when I analyze that. And you pause a lot because you have ADHD, so we can think about this, or maybe not. Or maybe we can do this for like a very specific episode, I don't know. Because again, like doing group activities, it's fun, but it's also like we have to organize it, and we're kind of losing some time doing that. When I can just rush through things when I'm, when we are working alone. But anyway, I'll give you like the details of this particular activity, so that will be like kind of like, your homework for the next month. And then we talk about that in a stream like this. And then we do the same thing. We go through websites and we take notes. And we try to be like, I don't know, to derive some interesting ideas together. Okay, that's everything for me for today. Thank you for being here for this stream. It was kind of improvised because I really had no idea what to talk about. I hope that it was still interesting, that you have learned a few things, maybe that you have like found some interesting manga to read, maybe, or maybe not. I'll see you Friday for blueprints for the hater session. because I love hating things. I know I won't have a good time on Blueprints, I think, and I don't know. I guess it's funny to see me rant about games. Do we want to rate someone? I mean, May was streaming, right? She left for stream. It would be like good etiquette to send you to her at least a little bit, because we won't raid again. NL doesn't have to be raided. He has like 12k viewers right now, so I'll send you to May. Feel free to stay with her if you want to. Feel free to go away if you don't want. It's just like good gesture. And yeah, see you on Friday.
Fantasy research. And that was really interesting, so I almost was a little bit late because I was tuned into that. That's really interesting. People call us strange for being more interested in perfecting our teamwork than challenging the champion. On. Oh, there's that. What is that called? Gallade? I like Gallade. What does that? That hits all of them, but should be alright because it's a grass type. I think Poppy Boy is alright. Especially if we go Phantom Force, so we're gonna be out of the way. Right? Or can we even hit any of them with a ghost move? I mean, we can just do that. The yapping was out of the chart, but I hope you have fun with your Nuzlocke. Yeah, I mean, we're trying to have fun right now. We already lost two months.